Kurt, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Elamine, I've got
All
you
right.
down.
Okay.
Kelly, is there anybody we can reach out to by phone?
Mr. Chairman, just to interrupt you briefly,
Yes, sir.
Tanique has made me aware that we can go ahead and start the agenda with the informational items just to get the meeting rolling, and then we can come back to the action items later to give someone a chance to join us.
Very good. I think that's a wonderful idea. And I guess at that point, until we have a quorum, there's no sense in reading our ethics or any of our other activities because those only come into play when we have voting matters.
Correct.
Okay. Well, then let's do that. We will officially pseudo adjourn or pseudo open our July TAC meeting. It's 4:21 in the afternoon. And I guess we'll just go ahead and jump to our informational items. And Matthew, I think you'll be up first on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, TAC members. So this is agenda item number 5. It's an informational item related to the programming of STPGDA funds for sidewalk, greenway, small roadway, and transit projects. So as a TMA, our MPO has the authority to program STPGDA transportation funds. And in November, we announced that we had about $13 million to program for those different categories. Following that up in January, we shared with you that the MPO community submitted 16 sidewalk projects, 4 greenway projects, 5 small roadway projects, and 2 transit projects. Also during January, this committee approved our evaluation process for how we would program those funds and which projects would receive that funding. After the approval of that evaluation process, we pulled together a selection committee, and we had MPO staff serve on that committee. We had City of Winston-Salem engineering staff. We had Town of Louisville staff. We had a couple employees from NCDOT Division 9. And then we also had the Facilities Construction Planning Director for the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School District. And you'll see the results of that evaluation process and that selection committee's work is available in the charts that follow this item. You'll see the sidewalk recommendations, the greenway recommendations, the small roadway and intersection recommendations, and finally the transit table. The next step after this is this item would be approved potentially at the next meeting. The other thing we would have to do is amend the 2020-2029 MTIP to reflect these new projects. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the process or the projects that are recommended from that committee, that selection committee, to move forward.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew? This will be on our meeting agenda at our next meeting for a vote for an action item.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kirk. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been told that we need to go ahead and read the statement prepared by the attorney since we've started meeting, even though we're not in the actual vote-taking section.
Very good. So is this our ethics statement or is this our roll call?
No, this would be the statement that I believe Byron sent you prior to the meeting.
Okay, well then we're excited about this. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the Safer at Home order issued by Governor Cooper, members of the Human Relations Commission are participating. Well, it's not Human Relations Committee. It is the TAC, Technical Advisory Committee, are participating virtually. All members will vote by roll call. A member will be recognized, at which time the member will state his or her vote. At the beginning of the meeting, the recording secretary should take the roll call by name. So I guess, Kirk, you do that, even though we don't have a quorum. Let's see who's here.
Mr. Chairman, I have good news. As you were speaking, we just met quorum.
Outstanding.
So with that being said, I will go ahead and take roll. Mr. Joins. Mr. Joins, are you still with us?
He might be on mute.
Well, we'll go ahead and move down to the next, Mr. Bessie.
The mayor's on mute.
Can't get it to unmute.
There you go. You're unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Joins. Mr.
Okay.
Bessie?
I need a hammer.
He's on mute as well, Kirk.
Well, I see visual confirmation, so I'll count that. Miss Adams, we see you.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Elamine.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Cross.
Here, present.
Mr. Rocket.
Here.
Miss Fulton.
Here.
Chairman Horn.
Here.
Mr. Byram.
I'm here.
Mr. Hutchins.
Here.
And Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, I think you're on mute still.
Am I, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Did I miss any voting members? All right, we have a quorum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, Kirk. And folks, you know, the good news is we only have another 6 months to get this working right. So by then we'll have it figured out and we'll do a great job, I think, at that point. First item on the agenda, obviously, is our public comments. This is an opportunity for you to speak and share your thoughts with the TAC members. Unfortunately, we are doing this remotely. Kirk, do we have anybody waiting to?
We do not have anyone waiting for public comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let me remind you, if you're watching and are not necessarily participating, you can make written comments, I believe. And those can be submitted to our TAC secretary. Kirk, what is your email address?
It is KIRKE as in Edward at cityofws.org.
Very good. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have 3 action items on our agenda for today. First one is consideration of our meeting minutes. You haven't had a chance to review those. If there are no changes or additions, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
Chairman, I move approval. This is Alan Joins.
Second.
Rick
DDS.
Cross.
Very good. I believe it was the motion by Mayor Joins and the second by Mayor Cross. Will you call the roll, please?
All right, we've got Mr. Joins affirmative, Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Miss Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Elamine.
I said I'm here.
Mr. Elamine, your vote?
Yeah.
Fleming, you're on mute.
Oh.
Capture
Mr. Elamine
twice.
appears.
Once for yes, twice for no. Fleming, I think you're on. If everybody would go ahead and take yourselves off mute every time we have these roll calls, that way it'll go a little quicker. So I think we're to Mr. Elamine.
Mr. Elamine.
Mr. Chairman, I can read his lips. He's saying, there he is. I'm trying to get off mute here. It says unmute. Try it again. You're
There you
unmuted.
go.
Okay. Now, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Cross is the second. Mr. Rocket.
Yes.
Miss Fulton.
Yes.
Chairman Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Byram.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins.
Yes.
And Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Motion is unanimous.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tanique, you have the second item on our action item list.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This item relates to the consideration of items to approve FTA Program 5307 CARES Act funding allocation for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority to use for bus purchases and a planning study, and amendments to the MTIP and the UPWP. This committee has approved the distribution of CARES Act funding to WISTA, but in order for WISTA to use some of those fundings to purchase buses or for the planning study, two things would need to happen. One, the bus purchases must be included in the MTIP and the STIP, and the planning study must be included in the UPWP. So this item includes information about the bus purchases and the planning study, and is an action to approve the amendment to the UPWP and also an amendment to the MTIP. Donna Woodson is available and can talk in a little bit more detail about the reason for the bus purchases and the planning study. So I'll turn it over to Donna real quick.
Donna, how are
Good
you?
afternoon. Good afternoon, TAC. As Tanique said, I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on the bus purchases as well as the planning. The bus purchases of the 8 additional buses to our fleet is actually to replace 12 of the existing buses that are have met or over their useful life. We are pleased that the 5307 CARES Act funds that were awarded will allow us to purchase these vehicles, and that's why we want to bring this item before you this afternoon. In addition to that, with the planning study that we are proposing is to hire and obtain planning efforts for the new Hampton Heights building facility upgrade. This building currently is over 43 years old. It was actually built in 1977. And as you know, through the years, the staffing has changed. We are currently at 224 employees located out of this facility, and we need the facility upgrade to enhance the space, office space, and adequate space to house those employees. The social distancing and all of those things this upgrade would actually help and take care of the barriers that we have locally at the facility we're at now. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them as needed.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Woodson?
This is Mayor Byram. Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Woodson, you mentioned that these buses will replace some of the aging fleet. Is there any discussion about maybe keeping some of those buses that would be replaced and increasing the routes so that there's more improved coverage, or those buses just really barely making it? And just thinking if we can use the new buses, not just to replace a retiring inventory, but if we can also use the new buses to expand the service area. Is that a consideration?
Yes, sir, it is. Actually, we have identified 5 of those 8 to retain in a contingency fleet for that purpose, for expansion, as well as for times such as the pandemic that we're enduring now. So we'll have adequate buses to accommodate for social distancing and anything that becomes necessary at that time. So yes, we'd have identified 5 buses to remain in the contingency fleet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Very good. With that, we'll entertain a motion.
Move
Chairman,
for,
I'll move approval.
I think that was that Mayor Swisher?
Now, this is Dan Bessie. I'm seconding Denise Adams' motion.
Very good. So Ms. Adams makes the motion, Mr. Bessie makes the second. Mayor Swisher is dead, so he can't probably participate in this meeting. Very good. Kirk, will you please do the roll call?
Mr. Joines,
Yes.
Mr. Bessie seconds, Ms. Adams first, Mr. Elamine, Mr. Elamine, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Ms. Fulton,
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins,
Yes.
and Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, it looks like you have our next item for consideration.
Yes, sir. The item before you is the review of a resolution approving designating future interstate route from US 52 to I-40 in Forsyth County as I-274. NCDOT is proposing the addition of future interstate route from US 52 to I-40 to the interstate system. The Winston-Salem Northern Beltway will be built to interstate standard and is listed as an unbuilt national highway system route. This route will be a approximately 14-mile facility from US 52 north of Winston-Salem, looping to the west and the south of the city, connecting to I-40 in Forsyth County. This portion of the Northern Beltway is identified in the STIP as R2247. This facility will satisfy a great need to alleviate congestion in the Winston urban area. And a project such as this facility is currently unavailable to provide movement of traffic around the western portion of the Winston-Salem urbanized area. So NCDOT is hereby requesting approval from the Winston-Salem urban area MPO to add this section as future I-274 from US 52 to I-40 in Forsyth County to the interstate route system. Also, they're requesting that this item be considered as an action item due to some time constraints. I have included in your packet a map of the project in question, and I'm sure staff from Division 9 will be is available to answer any questions that you have concerning this request.
Irene, would you scroll down and show that route real quick, please? This is what was formerly called the western leg of the Beltway, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. Best you remember those days.
Mr. Chairman, a quick question. Remind me the designation for the eastern leg.
Sir, I am not sure. I don't know if maybe Mr. Ivy can answer that question.
Yes, sir, Mayor. The eastern leg will be designated as Interstate 74 once completed. The individual segments, as we open them up, will be designated as North Carolina 74 until the entire corridor is completed.
Okay, that's the, so the eastern and western will have that same. But we all know that the eastern will be I-74. Yeah, and the western will be 274. Thank you, Pat.
Any other questions? Very good.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman. Alan.
Second, Rick Cross.
Kirk, would you call the roll, please?
All right, Mr. Chairman, before we start, I do want to let TAC members know that it appears Mike Rogers from Clemens has joined the meeting, so we will include him in the call as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Joins moved approval. Mr. Bessie?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Elamine? Mr. Elamine?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Cross seconded the motion. Mr. Rocket?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Fulton?
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Byram?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins?
Yes.
And Mr. Clark. Motion passes unanimously.
Yes.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize in our kind of disjointed meeting today, where we started before we really started. I neglected to read our ethics statement, which I have to do now, and just rewind this meeting in your mind. We're now at the beginning again. If any of our TAC members have a conflict of interest, which is and you are a member of your immediate family, will benefit financially from any of the issues that you'll be voting on today, you do need to notify us in writing of your conflict of interest. And if we should be discussing something which we deem as confidential, then you will not be sharing or disclosing that information with anybody outside of our technical advisory committee and our staff. Does anybody have a conflict of interest? Very good. We've already done the first item for information, so we're going to go ahead and skip over to the second one. And I believe, Byron, you have that one.
Yes, I do. The State Transportation Improvement Plan, or the STIP, lists all of the projects programs over the next 10 years for the state as well as our local MPO area. Regularly, the state updates this planning document with additions, modifications, and deletions of projects as they come forward. This document has to match our local Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program or MTIP. And so we are updating it with the following amendments. Before you are the changes that will be taken, that are be included in the next document update. Per our public participation plan, these amendments are going to be made available to the public for public feedback from June 19th to July 21st. Any comments that are received during that time period will be provided at the September meeting when this document or these amendments will be up for action. I'll be happy to take any questions regarding these amendments.
Any questions for Byron? Thank you, Byron. I believe you have the next one also.
Yes. We are also in the process of updating our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and our Comprehensive Transportation Plan, our CTP and our MTP, which outlines the vision for our transportation network over the next 25 years. We have been working with consultant BHB, who will be providing a quick presentation just to discuss where we are in this process update, as well as some feedback that we'll be looking for you, as well as the public at our next virtual meeting. I'll open the floor to Luba to provide a presentation on this update process.
Thank you, Byron. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and TAC members. Happy to be here with you today. So my name is Luba Zuba. I'm here on behalf of VHB study team working on the MTP and CTP plan update for the Winston-Salem MPO. So a quick update, and next slide, please, Byron, where we are in the process. So again, today, just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up of where we are in the process, review some of the data trends that we are seeing, let you know how you can be more involved with providing some feedback at this stage in the process, and then just highlight for you that the public meeting is coming up next Thursday. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, an MTP, a Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is a federal required long-range transportation plan for any urban area over 50,000 population. By federal regulations, we have to look at least 20 years out. Currently, we are working on a 25-year vision plan for the region. And it will also have to be fiscally constrained and include a variety of transportation modes, including looking at roadway, transit, bicycle, pedestrian, rail, freight, and aviation needs. There is an element of fiscal realism to the MTP plan update as compared with the CTP. So for the MTP, we have to forecast the funding that we think will be available in the region for transportation improvements. And that becomes one of the filters for project selection. And then also an important aspect of this plan is that we do want to make sure that there's an opportunity for public and stakeholder feedback as part of this plan update. Next slide, please. So where we are in the timeline of this process, it is a fairly short timeline. The plan has to be adopted in September at the September 17th meeting to meet the federal deadline. And we have already done a fair amount of work working with the steering committee on a vision and the goals and objectives for the plan, collecting a lot of existing data. And there is an existing conditions report that's available on the study website. We have also been working with the travel demand model tool, which has been provided by part staff, and we are running some scenarios. So currently we are in the process of developing those draft scenarios of recommendations, and that's some of the area where we are asking for public feedback as part of the public meeting that will be happening next Thursday, July 23rd at 5:30. And then we'll be releasing the draft plan in August for adoption in mid-September, September 17th. There'll be an additional public input opportunity likely to be scheduled in mid-August, mid to late August. Next slide, please. As part of some of the existing data review, we have looked at the population employment growth trends, and as part of the population employment projections adopted by the MPO, we are expecting a 27% increase in population, an increase of about 115,000 people. The darker green dots represent generally where we expect the population growth to be dispersed across the region. Next slide, please. In addition to population growth, there is a sizable employment growth expected for the region, about 170,000 more jobs, and the dark blue dots represent generally where those new jobs are expected to be concentrated across the region. Not an exact location, of course, this is more of a generalized location. But this data does highlight that we expect that the Winston-Salem urban area is going to be one of the important hubs for a concentration of jobs within the Greater Triad region. Next slide, please. Of course, as part of the plan update, we have also been looking at existing travel conditions and ADT data. This map highlights a snapshot of the base year 2017 average daily traffic. And as probably nobody would be surprised, there's higher travel volumes on some of those key corridors like I-40, Salem Parkway, and C-52. And then, of course, the future Northern Beltway is expected to carry a fairly significant amount of traffic as well. Next slide, please. We have also been collecting data on existing and planned bicycle and pedestrian facilities and some of the safety and crash data. So this map highlights some of the existing bicycle pedestrian facilities in the region, as well as the planned regional greenways. Next slide, please. Environmental justice analysis is also an important aspect of this plan update. We want to make sure that we review where the transportation disadvantaged populations are concentrated across the region, and we want to make sure that they're not disproportionately negatively impacted by the transportation improvements that are recommended. So this map in particular highlights how the transportation disadvantaged populations are concentrated in relationship to where the existing transit routes are in the region. Next slide, please. As already mentioned, fiscal constraint is one of the important aspects of the plan. So we have so far developed a fiscal forecast for this plan for the region looking out 25 years. And we expect that the STI strategic prioritization process will remain in place. So as a result, we have broken out our expected funding categories by the STI funding tier. So we have statewide mobility, regional impact, and division needs, with an expectation that approximately $2.7 billion will be available across those three funding tiers for the region in the next 25 years. And as a larger TMA region, Winston-Salem urban area is also expected to have access to approximately $236 million in CMAQ and STBGDA funding as well for additional transportation projects. Those funds do not typically have to go through STI prioritization. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the longer, the more broad categories of funding for transportation available in the region. A lot of those funding categories like safety, bridge replacement, and general ongoing maintenance, those funding categories are not typically processes where the MPO gets very involved. So those will likely be carried as lump sum items in the MTP plan update. But just to let you know that we have considered them as well. Next slide. As part of the plan update, we wanted to make sure that we are taking into account what is truly important to the region. So vision, goals, and objectives were developed with support from the steering committee. Next slide, please. The slide illustrates the vision statement, and there should have been a handout provided to you as part of the agenda packet that included vision, goals, and objectives. Those will help us make sure that we have the selection methodology that matches what is truly identified as important for the region in terms of project selection. Next slide, please. As part of the documentation of potential projects to consider, we have been collecting data in GIS mapping files for past plans completed in the region. So we now have an online interactive map, and it's bit.ly/WS2045 MTP, where you can go and navigate around, click and see what various projects have been considered. Now, this is a lot. If you look at the icon that looks like a stack of square pancakes, that's the layers. You can go in there and you can select to show or not show bicycle and pedestrian potential projects as well. There's some other additional land use layers in there. For example, we have identified TAZs, the transportation analysis zones from the model where the highest population employment growth is expected over the next 25 years. And then the little magnifying glass tool is a query tool where you can go and search by project ID. So after this meeting today, we're expecting to be providing you with a copy of our draft scenarios of recommended projects. So in combination with this online interactive tool, that would allow you to go in and see where those projects are more easily. On the map that you can see on your screen, the lines in blue are potential roadway projects and the lines in red are potential transit improvements. And back to the slides, please. Thank you. So one of the important pieces of information to consider right now is if you do have a minute to go check out this map, and if you see something that's missing from this online interactive map, where there's maybe a particularly important project in your community that has been identified more recently through a Main Street study or something like that, there's always a chance you might have missed something. So now is a good time to let us know if you feel like a particular project should really be removed from this plan, removed from consideration, or something that might be missing that we should really be considering. So please communicate with Byron, or feel free to contact me directly as well if there's some particular project-specific information you'd like to share with us. Next slide, please. As part of analysis of existing transportation deficiencies, we are looking at the travel demand model data. The model is maintained by PART. We have plugged in so far the existing and committed projects with the population employment projections out of 2045, what we are calling 2045 E+C scenario. And based on those results, we can kind of see where the congestion will be the worst based on the current trends. If we continue to fund the projects that are already scheduled to be funded in the STIP, in the first 5 years of the STIP, but we don't add any new projects. So some of the places where we're seeing those congestion issues concentrating, that would be along I-40 corridor, US 441 east of the Northern Beltway, that future project. Also, there's some additional concentrations of congestion issues. For example, a couple of the north-south corridors around Bermuda Run, Stratford Road south of Haynes Mall, and then north of Five Points happens to be one of those congestion hotspots. And then sections of Old Walker Town Road is another example where we're seeing some congestion issues. So those will be taken into account as we're developing those scenarios or projects. Next slide, please. We have held our first public input series of meetings back in May, and there was also an online survey open as part of that series. So we have received 419 survey responses. Those survey responses have also helped inform the vision, goals, and objectives developed for this plan so far. But just to note that some of the key priorities that were called out by the survey responses included safe and complete streets, roadway conditions, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and also people cared about continuing to invest in maintenance and repair and safety, in addition to bicycle and pedestrian public transportation improvements. Next slide, please. So as Byron has already mentioned, we will be holding the public meeting for this plan on next Thursday, July 23rd from 5:30 to 6:30. The link should be posted on the website a few days prior. So you can go to our website for the plan. That's www.wsmtpupdate.com, and under Get Involved, we'll post those links. So you should be able to go into the virtual public meeting space and navigate around. And then we'll also have several breakout sessions, including one more focused on roadway improvements, one on public transportation, one on bicycle and pedestrian, and the fourth breakout session will be a combination of rail, freight, aviation, and innovative transportation technologies. So please share with your networks as appropriate and applicable. We'd love to get as many people to come join us as possible. And then after the meeting is over, we'll still leave the virtual public meeting space open as just a way for people to go navigate and learn more about the plan. And we'll make the recordings of those breakout sessions available on the website as well. And then again, the next round of public meetings will be happening in August once we have the draft plan. So for now, please take a minute to look at the online interactive map of potential projects. Let us know if you see something that's missing. And again, we'd welcome your participation at the virtual public meeting next week. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
A question and probably a statement. All of this sounds great. My concern is again that the data, the information, we may have a semblance of it, which I would bet money most of us really don't. That how do you get the information? I need a slide or something that I can put out on my Facebook platforms that my constituents, poor people, Black folk, brown folk, at a level that they get it. You know, they don't care nothing about all of this. They just need to know this project, the intent is to make transportation needs accessible. We need your input, that sort of thing. I would like to see that for me, and I'm planning a community virtual Zoom meeting for my ward, a couple of them coming up. And I may even ask Byron or somebody, any of you, to chime in because staff from the city will be speaking. But I do have a concern also, Chair Horn and committee, with COVID, the financing of infrastructure or projects of any kind. I know we still have to run government and do this, but what is the reality of these projects being put on hold like so many others already?
Thank you, Ms. Adams. On your first part, I agree with you. It would be very much appreciated if we had something very simple that we could disseminate in our own communities that let people know how easy it is or how easy it can be to participate in these and to digest the information. So, Lou, I'll leave that up to you and Byron to come up with something, but I think it was a great suggestion. Dee Dee, I don't know, maybe Pat can answer this one, but I don't have a crystal ball in terms of funding for the future. Pat, do you have a chime in on this one?
I wish I had a lot of information here. Of course, the legislature passed House Bill 77 last month, which did help stabilize DOT financing, although it did not provide any new funding for new projects moving forward. I think everybody understands, as we've talked about before, that the gasoline tax model is not sustainable. And the department, specifically the secretary, is looking for alternative ways to fund transportation moving forward. This is not just a North Carolina problem. It's a nationwide problem. Right now, transportation funding, particularly with the pandemic, has been incredibly problematic, which is why House Bill 77 was passed, to try to overcome the some $350 million revenue shortfall that resulted from the pandemic. So hopefully, as we move forward, a lot of this will depend on the state and federal. If you're looking in terms of stimulus and different things like that, but I don't think anybody would venture a guess on what might happen there at this time.
Thank you.
I had a question and a comment, please.
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, if you may.
First question is, will this PowerPoint be available for us? I have a 6 o'clock community meeting. I'd like to share part of it with my community members. Can you send us this on a PDF form, this actual PowerPoint?
Yes, to address the questions previous, we can send this to you as a PowerPoint. And we are also going to be providing the same, we're going to be providing information about the upcoming virtual meeting in a PDF format that you can share with others. There's actually a copy of the flyer for the event in the very back of the agenda packets that you have. We'll be providing that same information following this meeting to you all.
And the suggestion, you know, when you say 25 years out, I'll be a young 93 years old at that point, Lord willing. So it may be better to do it in 5-year increments when you're talking about projects of this magnitude. I know what the specs are in terms of guidelines for funding, et cetera, but for the average citizen, I think 5-year chunks might be more digestible when you go into a public setting, especially.
Understood. This is we typically update these plans every 5 years, but as the federal requirement is, we have to have an outlook of at least 25 years whenever creating these plans. They are updated every 5 years, typically.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bolton, I believe you started to raise your hand. There you are.
Hey, thank you, Chairman. I just have a quick question. Chris Jensen forwarded me a flyer about the public meeting right before this meeting today, and I'm just curious, can we just add the TAC members to that email distribution? Because I could have had that July 10th and started working on getting public interest. So I'm just not sure why we're not included on that distribution with that flyer that happened on July 10th. So maybe you might want to add us, because that might have helped, you know, get more interest. And I'll work on it already, and I'll do social media information. But, you know, the sooner the information's available, the better. So thank you.
No problem.
So we'll be receiving a copy of that flyer, and we can all do our own community communications. Thank you.
Make that happen.
Any other questions for Luba? We do pay her by the hour.
One more question, Chairman. I'm sorry. It mentioned in there about a handout. I did not see that. Is that going to be forwarded to us, Byron?
Yes, it will be. It'll
Okay.
be forwarded after this meeting as well.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Very good. Thank you, Luba. We appreciate you being here. That was a really informative presentation.
Thank you
Exciting
all.
project. Very good. Any other questions? Now moving on to the next informational item. I believe, Kelly, you have that one.
Yes, sir. So the item before you is a review of the renewal of the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization's Transportation Conformity Memorandum of Agreement. The North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality is requesting the adoption and signature of a revised MOA. In accordance with the Clean Air Act, the DEQ chose to develop transportation conformity MOAs to ensure that interagency consultation procedures for transportation conformity are followed in each state maintenance area. The MOA outlines the responsibilities and processes that each signatory will follow to ensure that transportation plans conform to the emission budget set forward by the North Carolina State Implementation Plan. As of now, no action is needed besides the signature and adoption of the MOA, since all the areas in the state are currently in compliance. The DEQ is coordinating this effort for renewing, in the process of renewing the MOA for each of your 11 NPOs, as well as the National Park Services, NCDOT, and NCDOT to fulfill their duties. Most of the revisions include updates to names of plans as well as agencies, and some of the methodologies have been updated to reflect current practices. I've included in the packet the red line version as well as the final version so you can see exactly what those changes are. This item is only for information at this time. It will come back in September for action.
Good. Any questions for Kelly? Thank you, Kelly. We'll move on to staff reports, and we have two highlighted members. We have A, which is an update of the ever popular Mr. Pat Ivory, and the K item, which is our ethics update from Kirk. And then we have just a little brief explanation of a chart you received last night from Kelly. Members, are there any other items that you wish to have pulled off of the informational section to hear staff presentations on today? I'm disappointed. I thought we'd want all of them. Okay, Mr. Ivy, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think my report begins on page 188. Pretty self-explanatory. I did want to mention to everybody, we are in the last segments of trying to complete the first piece of the Northern Beltway from Salem Parkway to US 158. Contractor has told us today that that road, we should be able to open that road to traffic by the end of August, certainly well before the Labor Day holiday, but they are moving. The biggest thing left to be done is the resurfacing on Salem Parkway. That is going to take a while. There's a lot of work that has to be done, but we've worked out the final details on that. So moving forward with that, all the other projects, the schedules are shown and the updates are self-explanatory, subject to any questions from the group. I've already given you an update on House Bill 77 and available for any questions on that as well if the members have any.
Any questions for Pat?
Me.
Yes.
Yep. Hey, Pat, Mr. Ivy, can you tell me out there at Mesa Grove Road, people are asking me because one day they'll see workers and then they don't. So is there any time frame when that connection will be?
The project completion date, Ms. Fulton, is actually spring of next year. The contractor, as you can see, is well ahead of schedule, and we anticipate actually being able to open that road probably in early September.
Great. All the way to the Mesa Grove exit?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Thank you,
Yes.
Chairman.
Any other questions for Pat? Thank you, Pat, again. Kirk, have a little update for us on our ethics.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have very good news to report to the TAC this month in that all members and alternates are up to date on their calendar year 2020 ethics requirements. So you won't have to hear me give any of these updates until January.
Very good. Thank you, Kurt. And thank you, members, for doing that. Kelly, we were in a conversation yesterday, and I asked Kelly if there wasn't some type of scorecard that we could take a look at to see where projects are that was easy to follow and easy to look at and see in her inimitable way. So, of course, Mr. Chairman, we have one of those right now. So that was sent out to you last night. Kelly, you want to through it just really quickly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The list, the table that is displayed currently on your screen is of all the projects that are locally administered projects. I sent it to everybody yesterday as well. Those are like our SCPDA projects or our CMAC projects. The fun thing about this is I attempted to break them down between CMAC and others, so that we can determine which funding, which project was funded with which funding sources. And then we've been using these at our TCC meetings. There's also a status section that I try to keep up with. So I'm happy to update it for you guys as well. And if you see something that I'm missing, or if there's a project that you have a question about that is specific to our MPU, I'm happy to look at it and add it.
Thank you, Kelly. That's really helpful. I know I often get questions about what's happening with our projects in this is something that I can refer to very quickly and know where they are. Kelly, you'll provide us updates on this as we go along, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Members, are there any other issues to discuss this afternoon? We have our next meeting scheduled for September 17th. We're anticipating that will be a virtual meeting also, which we could be together. For those of you who have been playing acronym bingo this afternoon, check your cards. We had FTA, MTIP, UPWP, WSU, MPO, STBGDA, TADA, better known as TADA, CTP, MTP, WSTA, PRT, NCDOT, CMAC, and STIP. So check your cards if you have any of those. Bingo, and you'll get a great prize next meeting. With that, members, any final comments? Very good. I'm sorry?
All right. I said, wear your mask, be safe.
Be safe. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I think it was Ms. Fulton makes the motion. I believe Mr. Elamine made the second. Kirk, if you'll do the roll call, please.
Roll call not required for that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Then we are adjourned.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.